Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. So let me ask you a question today. Have you ever been really, really angry? I'm not talking about momentarily annoyed or mildly distressed. I'm talking about bite through a steel bar, your fists are clenched, your eyes are popping out, your face is red, you are just furious. Well, that happens to people. Most of us, when we get that way, we take a step back, we calm down, and we try and deal with things rationally. But not everybody. And today we have another of the lawyers behaving badly issues. And this one is a Florida lawyer. So the Florida lawyer is the one who is behaving badly in this case. And on top of that, he is one of the prosecutors from the January 6th cases. Now, he's no longer with the Department of Justice, and after what we're going to discuss, he is no longer with the law firm that hired him away from the Department of Justice. In fact, he's probably going to be doing a little bit of work inside a jail cell for a while because of what happened. So let's get right into what it is that actually happened. So this is a story that I picked up off of Fox News, and it says former January 6th prosecutor accused of stabbing driver in Tampa road rage fight. Well, you know, anytime you've got the use of the words road rage, the media is trying to categorize this as some incident of vehicular violence or vehicular-oriented violence, and that appears to be an accurate description of what happened. According to the news article, what happened was this gentleman was driving in his car on a bridge in Tampa, and this is the fellow right here, that's his mugshot. He was driving on a bridge in Tampa, and up in front of him, a man had slumped over his wheel, so a Good Samaritan got out of their car, walked back to him, and, knocked on the window, and that startled him. He woke up, and he drove forward and smashed into the back of the Good Samaritan's car. My daughter always says that it's always the innocent bystanders who get shot. Sometimes it's also the innocent bystanders whose cars get hit. But in this case, not only did he smash into the car in front of him, he immediately reversed and tried to go around them, and that's when he hit this gentleman's car. His name is Patrick Scruggs. He's 38 years old. He's an attorney who had previously worked as a January 6th prosecutor. Well, apparently this was just so upsetting to our prosecutor friend here that he jumped out of his car, went to the driver's side window of the guy who hit his car, busted out the window with the end of his pocket knife, and then proceeded to use his pocket knife to repeatedly stab the driver. Well, our Good Samaritans who are standing back in horror at this try to intervene and say, hey, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. And he turns around and chases them with the knife. Not a good look. Okay, I can understand that you're really ticked off at the guy who hit your car, but that's why you got insurance. Nobody was hurt, and until you started flinging knives around. So he chases them down, and fortunately an off-duty police officer is on the scene, and he takes him into custody and calls for backup, and they take him to the Pinellas County Jail where he bonds out after paying $68,000. Well, he actually gets a surety bond, so a $68,000 surety bond would probably cost you around $7,000. And he obviously has the $7,000. He gets his bond and he gets out of jail. And of course, he also hires a lawyer, and the lawyer says, hey, there's more to this than meets the eye, more to this than has been reported in the media. Please keep an open mind. Everybody is innocent until proved guilty. And I would point out that I'm relying on the media to have this right, and of course that's not always a good thing either. But at any rate, that's what's been reported, and always you have to assume that the media doesn't have the whole story. The whole story is probably something other than what has been reported, but whether or not that exonerates attacking a man with a knife in a car is another story. Apparently, it didn't sit well with his employers who had hired him away from the Department of Justice, because when they were contacted by the media, and law firms are terrible about this, they said, Scruggs, we don't know any Scruggs. We used to have a guy that worked here, but he don't work here no more. And I think that's, I think particularly with big law firms, and this was a big name law firm in Atlanta, that's what they do. If you create a stir, if you create a controversy out there in the media, you do something bad like this, they are not going to stand behind you. That's just not the big law credo. The big law doesn't really believe in innocent till proven guilty. It's innocent until it causes us PR problems, and then you are guilty as sin and you're out the door. So that's what happened. What makes this interesting to me is another thing that happened after this. Now, this guy, when he was a January 6th prosecutor, prosecuted the January 6th defendant called the lectern guy. He was the guy who was photographed carrying Nancy Pelosi's lectern. Now, everybody has different views on January 6th. Clearly, those morons shouldn't have gone into the Capitol and done what they did. A lot of them were upset. A lot of them believed that there were election problems, and it certainly doesn't justify breaking the law, but it also, it also wasn't the siege of the Bastille. It was not something that is the worst thing that's ever happened in American history, and as a result of that, these people shouldn't have been treated any differently than any other criminal defendant. Now, this guy, when he bonds out on $68,000, doesn't have to wear an ankle monitor, doesn't have to surrender his legally held firearms if he has any. He is given no restrictions whatsoever after stabbing a guy multiple times with a pocket knife. And then we have the lectern guy, and here's what he has to say about that. The lectern guy says, meet the guy who prosecuted me in Tampa for walking in a building on January 6th. Now, he didn't just walk in a building. Let's be honest. He grabbed Nancy Pelosi's lectern and carried it around. He essentially took possession of a piece of government property that wasn't his and that he didn't have permission to take. And as a result, that's criminal trespass, and that's a crime. He committed it. He should have been prosecuted for it. No question about it. Here's what he says. He says, my crimes were so egregious, walking around with a lectern, that he demanded I wear an ankle monitor, be drug tested at random, surrender my passports, be restricted to the Middle District of Florida, and given a nightly curfew. What restrictions do you think he should get for stabbing a man repeatedly in public? Well, as I mentioned, he didn't get any restrictions whatsoever. So the question remains, should he have restrictions? Absolutely, he should have restrictions. He certainly should not be allowed to drive anywhere if he is so prone to road rage that he jumps out of his car and stabs people. And again, that assumes that what has been reported is true, because I used to believe that the media got it about 95% right. My view on that now is they probably get it about 70% right most of the time. But when it involves something that they are trying to champion or advocate for as an issue, the verity of the information sometimes drops below 50%, I think. At any rate, the media being what it is, you can't necessarily trust that the recitation of events in the story is absolutely accurate. It's important to remember in these situations that the presumption of innocence attaches, and until and unless he is proved guilty in a court of law, or he pleads guilty in a court of law, he is just a guy who's accused of doing something bad. And should he have restrictions on bond? Yes. He certainly shouldn't be allowed to go anywhere near the victims. He shouldn't be allowed to talk to the victims. And that brings me to the real reason I wanted to do this particular video. And that is, I think that a lot of times people don't realize that the root word of danger is anger. Anger is among the most destructive of emotions that you can have. Now, I get angry every day, at least in part. For some reason in my elder years, I have developed an inability to hold on to stuff. I'll grab the TV remote, and I'll try to change the channel on the TV, and whoop, that thing slips right through my hands, hits the floor, and goes right underneath my chair. It defies physics in doing that, but it does it anyway. And so, I just kind of growl like a bear and reach down there and pick it up, usually causing some pain in my back because I'm older and stiffer than I used to be. At any rate, I do get angry, but I try to take a deep breath and I try to be very careful when I get angry at a person. And my sort of the steps that I take now when I get angry at a person, I shut up, I walk away, and I try to think if whatever made me angry is going to matter 20 years from now. And if the answer to that is yes, then I might try to go say something in a with a civil tongue. I might go over and say, hey, you went speeding through the parking lot, you weren't looking, and you almost hit that little girl over there by the car. And you probably need to be a little more careful when you drive through parking lots. And I would say it just that way. And, if they get upset and angry with me, I'll put up my hands and say, hey, didn't mean to, make you angry. I'm just telling you that, I saw something. I thought maybe you didn't see it. Thought I'd let you know. If you do that and you sort of take all of the vitriol out of your comments and you don't use words like stupidly, moronically, what were you thinking? Did your mother drop you on your head at birth? Things like that, which I am sometimes prone to using in a humorous vein that I suppose some people would find that to be not humorous, and they might take umbrage at that. But at any rate, if you just try and take the sting out of it, a lot of times like the thing says, you catch a lot more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Although, as they said on the Big Bang Theory, if you really want to catch flies, the thing that catches flies the best is feces. I don't recommend spreading a lot of that around. I mean, after all, that's what we have the government for, right? So what's going to happen to our Florida lawyer? Well, if he is convicted, he will probably at least be suspended from the practice of law because that's a violent felony that he committed. They might be able to plead it down to a misdemeanor assault, particularly if there is some degree of fault on the other person. But if he is convicted of a felony, it's pretty likely that he'll be suspended from the practice of law. And that's a good result. It's a very good result because you don't want somebody who is that prone to anger managing cases and defending or prosecuting people in a civil courtroom. It's just not a good plan. If you get that kind of angry, it tends to indicate that you make emotional decisions rather than rational and logical decisions. And one of the reasons that you hire an attorney is so you can make the best strategic and tactical decisions necessary in a trial. And if somebody is dominated by emotion, they can't do that. So that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you found this interesting, helpful, maybe a little bit different than some of the stuff that I routinely do. If you have an opportunity today, please go out of your way and try and do something nice for someone. When things like this event happen where somebody gets stabbed and hurt in a violent confrontation like that, it really damages everybody because we should take better care of people, and we shouldn't allow that kind of thing to go unpunished, and hopefully it won't be unpunished. But just as important, we need to do something to sort of balance the scales, a random act of kindness. And I think that is a good way to behave, particularly when you see things in our world and in our society that are, shall we say, disappointment-inducing. Thank you so much for watching, and have a marvelous day. Catch me down here at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.